Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. People who believe they have been abducted by aliens. What was your experience like? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. My junior year in college, I had a strange experience. First, a few details. My dorm room was attached to my roommate, so that I had to go out hers to get to the bathroom or the hallway. She was a light sleeper, but I wasn't the type to be out late, so it didn't matter. I had two normal operations in my life at that time and discovered that while under anesthesia, I would wake up briefly toward the end before I was supposed to. If I got a mosquito bite, I got to deal with it for at least a month. I'm not a fast healer. One night, I had the most vivid dream of my life. I woke up briefly somewhere else and then I went right back to sleep. In this dream, I looked left, I looked right, and then passed back out, just like if I was in surgery. I was on a hospital gurney, slightly reclined, facing the wall. There was ambient noise behind me, and the echo suggested it was a very large room. There was nothing sinister about the noises. On either side of me was a row of empty hospital gurneys. At my feet, just to my right, two people were having a conversation sitting on a bench against the wall. One was a person in a dark suit. The other was... I don't know who it was. It was small and I saw its hands, while it appeared to have darker skin, grayish. They were speaking together so animated and excited, like two old friends who hadn't seen each other in years, and they didn't notice me wake up. I didn't recognize the dialogue, though I don't speak German, Mandarin, Russian, etc. I recognize them when I hear them. This language was wholly unrecognizable, yet the person in the suit was fluent. I went back to sleep. In the morning, I said, "Self, that was a messed up dream," and went to the shower. As I passed my roommate, who was still in bed, she asked, "Where did you go last night?" I thought that was odd. After my shower, I started to put my makeup on and noticed something on my face. I leaned closer and could not believe what I saw. Two perfectly parallel lines, impossibly thin, impossibly perfect. There was some clear, hard gel on the top, and that's what I felt. There was no blood. My own hair was thicker than the width of the cuts, yet I could see down into my skin a little ways. This was 1996. I had never seen anything like this. These days, I would say it was a laser cut topped with liquid Band-Aid, but neither of those things seemed to be prevalent in those days. I said, okay, there's an explanation. I slept on a staple or a paperclip. I do homework in my bed all the time. I went and scoured my pillow for anything sharp. I found nothing. So I got my sewing needle, a staple from some homework, and a paperclip. I dunked them in hydrogen peroxide and made cuts on my face similar to what was there. Immediately, blood welled up in the skin was jagged for all three objects, and the width of all the cuts were thicker than the laser cuts. I determined that nothing in my room could have made the cuts. I didn't have an X-Acto knife, but I knew the blood would well up the same way if I did. I skipped my first class as I tried to figure out what to do. I kept obsessively feeling my face all day, in awe of the perfection of what was there and how it could have come to be there. There were only two people on campus rich enough to have a new digital camera, which meant I would have to borrow a friend's 35mm because I didn't have my own. That meant I would have to explain myself to my friend and possibly the Photoshop when the pictures came back. Who would I even give the photos to? Who would I even contact, and what would I tell them? In those days, if you even said the word alien, you were a pariah. After hours of mental debate, sitting on the edge of my bed, I gave up thinking about it and finished my classes for the day. I sat on the edge of my bed into the night, debating, unsure of what to do. In the wee hours of the morning, I woke up. The cuts were gone, completely healed, no trace of even a scar. I was disturbed for a few days, but then I eventually forgot about it. A few years after graduating, I decided I was going to have some dental work done, and I went to two different offices to get quotes. They both took a full facial x-ray. I had long since forgotten my crazy dream and the cuts until I sat down across from the first x-ray technician and pointed to a strange thing showing up above my teeth. I asked if I was looking at a mirror image because it was on the same side as my cuts had been, rather than the opposite side. No, I was told the X-ray was an actual, not a mirror image, so the right side of the image corresponded with the right side of my face. I pointed to the almost square image above my teeth and asked what that was. "It's just an X-ray anomaly." He didn't seem bothered by it. I figured that meant there was some damage or irregularity with the X-ray plates and let it go. Then I went to the second orthodontist, and had another X-ray done. You guessed it, the square was there in the exact same place. This time I didn't even try to make polite small talk or beat around the bush. I pointed to the square and said, "What is that?" This time the tech looked at me funny and said, "It's an X-ray anomaly." Then she leaned closer to me and whispered, "We see them all the time," in a way that gave me goosebumps. This was in Spokane, Washington. I didn't know what else to say, so I said nothing. Could it be that whatever negative or plates or whatever they used for an X-ray were damaged in exactly the same spot, in exactly the same shape? Maybe, I guess. I don't know much about X-rays. After that, I reflected on my situation. I don't feel freaked out, but I think there might be something in my face put there by someone else. Here's what I know. We do this all the time to other species. We chase them in helicopters, shoot at them with tranquilizer darts, take rectal temperature, take blood samples, stamp radio tags into their ears with no regard to if it hurts or the trauma of the event, or if their furry buddies will ostracize them later because they have something funky on their ear. In my situation, I was clearly well cared for, if it really happened at all. Someone was there, some kind of representative on my behalf. I was handled in such a way that if I didn't have a weird metabolism, I wouldn't have known what even happened. I never once felt pain. My cut healed instantly. If this is some kind of research-driven radio tag for the purposes of data collection, preservation of habitat or species, like we would do, they did it with far more regard for me than we have for other species on our own planet. I don't know what might happen if I get another X-ray 20 years later. I have tried to look when I go through airport security if anything shows up on the image we see in the booth, but I don't see anything. Strangely, I'm okay with this. I think it might just be science, nothing nefarious or evil. I wish my consent had been asked first, but I suppose it's hard to ask for consent when you're not even supposed to exist. So, let it be known that I believe anything is possible, right? So, am I skeptical that there have been alien abductions? A little bit. Maybe not, but I think especially in today's modern era, right, where there are cameras in every business, every door has a Ring camera, everyone has a camera in their pockets, or 98% of the people do. Hard evidence, clear as day evidence, still eludes us up to a point. So it's not cynicism, it's just skepticism. So I don't know. I'm not saying that anyone's story isn't valid, and maybe there's a logical explanation, and maybe they were abducted by aliens, or maybe it was a dream. I don't know. What do you guys think? I can answer this one. For starters, I'm 21 years old now. I'm a guy. When I was 13, I was a chubby, curly-haired goof, and I was excited for my birthday within the next week. I'd been getting very little sleep due to a mixture of excitement for the giant cookie I requested as my birthday cake and school stress rubbish, bullies, really, kept me up at night for a few nights. So this experience might be caused by a mix of sleep deprivation, night terrors. I have had night terrors semi-frequently my entire life. Anyway, I was getting ready to sleep and snuggled into bed when I realized the lights were still on. So I sit up in bed and peek out the window. My view was obstructed mostly by a blanket covering the window, and my bed was in the corner of the room. So I only had a small view of the window, and I lock eyes with a gray head covering my entire view and beyond the window. Next thing I know, it was morning, and I was tucked back into bed with my lights still on, but my window was cracked open slightly. I told my parents about what happened at breakfast, and they told me to stop lying for attention. I lost a little bit more sleep from the experience and got over it pretty quickly, never happened again. Not too fascinating. I'm a believer in aliens due to the size of the universe. However, I don't fully believe it was an alien I saw. A little bit of me wants to believe that it was an extraterrestrial. We had a big playground with a giant field, not even 200 yards from our house. We could walk to through the woods. So maybe it was an alien who parked his car and was just snooping around real quick. I really don't know if I was abducted or not, but I witnessed something pretty unexplainable. My ex and I were driving out of my suburban neighborhood super late one night on the way to go to eat Waffle House or something. As we're nearing the exit to my neighborhood, I look up into the sky and we both notice these 3 really strange orange lights in a triangle form. We then stopped the car in the middle of the road to figure out what we were looking at. These lights didn't have the quality of lights you see emitting from a plane or a star. When you look at stars, they're so far away that they almost seem 2D. But these lights felt 3D somehow. These lights were much bigger and seemed closer, like high enough into the sky to be well above the trees, but not above the clouds. And they were just floating there, not moving up, down, left, or right, but eerily still. I really don't know how to explain how still these things were, but it was unnatural. And I know that sounds stupid, but that's how it felt when I saw them, and I wish I could explain it better. But when I saw this, I was both mesmerized and sort of in shock. I've always been a UFO enthusiast, and I've always wanted to see something bizarre like this, and finally it was happening. I couldn't take my eyes off of what I was looking at, and I feel like I didn't for like an hour. I really don't know how much time passed, but it really did feel like an unnatural amount of time. Finally, these globes of light just abruptly dissolved away, kind of like they were sucked into a black hole or something. We break our gaze and look at each other, and my ex asks me if I just saw what she saw. And yeah, we couldn't come up with an explanation at all. To this day, no one believes me, and I don't care. I saw what I saw, and I'm now fully confident we are not alone. Well, we weren't abducted, but my husband and I had a UFO encounter that still boggles my mind to this day. We live in an apartment complex in a highly populated, nicer urban area. We arrived back at home late on a Saturday night about 1 a.m., walking from the parking garage back to our apartment building. It happened to look up at the sky. I immediately noticed this huge triangle-like object slowly gliding above us as we watched as it disappeared behind another building. Meanwhile, both of us are still arguing over what this thing was. It was silent. I mean, zero noise. With 2 rows of lights on either side, we walk around the side of the building, looking into the sky, and about 10 minutes later, we see it again. It was closer and cleaner this time. I could even see the mirror details on the body, lights and all. We are both almost screaming at this point, what the actual is that? As we watched this thing pull up straight into the air and slowly disappear right in front of our eyes. Not kidding. We watched this thing slowly become transparent until we couldn't see it anymore. We kept looking for it for about another hour. Cell phone cameras pointed to the sky from the top of the tallest apartment building. We finally gave up and did enough research to compare what we saw to a stealth bomber plane. The shape is similar, but this thing was completely silent and could disappear. Where we live is home to tons of tech company headquarters, literally across the street from us. We are next to 2 major highways, and it's generally a super busy area. I'm only mentioning this because it seems most UFO encounters happen in rural and not so populated areas. I'm still freaked out, and I'm always checking the skies at night. Throwaway, as this is something that has ruined my life before. This is honestly hard to type and talk about, as there's definitely some PTSD issues related to it. At around 11 or 12, I started waking up with memories of being up in a ship seeing aliens, the typical grays. I'd been fascinated with aliens all my upbringing, more on that later, and I thought it was awesome. I told people at school, and teasing and bullying got so bad I eventually changed schools. I told my mom, and I got a simple, that's nice. My parents were separated, so I only saw my dad rarely. But that year when I saw him, I started talking about it, And that's where a lot of things started falling apart. He was a huge Jesus freak and immediately started getting mad at me for talking about that stupid alien shit again. And as he berated me for past events, he brought up a bunch of times in the past that I had talked about aliens, said I had an alien friend, or times I had been with them. Up until then, I had no recollection, but as soon as he started talking about the instances, I remembered them. One of the things he brought up was when we got a shirt with aliens on it a few years ago. I had talked a bunch about them. I distinctly remembered the shirt, just not talking about them. During that time, I ended up at my grandma's, who I stayed with a lot as a child, about 5. I brought up that I thought I had been abducted, and she laughed, mentioning that I was talking about that again. I asked her what she meant, and she told me that when I was little, I would scream and fuss and refuse to sleep in my room, that I wanted to sleep in the living room so the aliens could take me away so that I could go with them. They didn't see the harm, so they'd let me, and I'd fall asleep no problem. Again, once told about the events, I started to remember them. This started to really scare me. If my dad and grandma were tinfoil hat types, I would question them, but they both adamantly disbelieve in aliens. They're not in the Bible, and would never ever play along to such things. The fact that it had been a continuous thing all my life, with repressed memories, was terrifying. I started to go back and really think of my life, and worked on remembering things. I remembered several times seeing mummies, which I now think are what very little me made the gray-head bodies to be. I remembered being terrified to be exposed out of the blanket, but would eventually leave some parts out, thinking, if they want to study my arm, they can study my arm. And I would wake up with odd thin cuts on whatever part I left out. The most damning, though, was remembering frequently going to the vacant lot next to my house, looking for UFO landing prints. After all this, I was obviously certain of my experiences and vocal about it. I ended up having to see a psychiatrist and a psychologist. Psychiatrist diagnosed me as schizophrenotypical. Psychologist vetoed it, saying that anyone who believed in God could qualify, and given the amount of reported alien abductions, it wasn't his place to say it never happened. During my times of talking about things, I met someone who knew a lot about aliens and psychic phenomena, and that if they were seeing me all my life, I probably had some potential. For the next couple of years, I found myself down a crazy rabbit hole of conspiracy theory stuff. In addition, I had done some psychic tricks, mind reading, remote viewing, telepathy, viewed by people who did not believe me. You're probably thinking this is super ridiculous and crazy. So does everyone else. Life's really weird when you know aliens and psychic stuff exist, and anyone you talk to thinks you're crazy. So I stopped talking about it, stopped telling people, try really hard to tell myself it was all just a dream. Psychic shit doesn't exist. I'm crazy. The more I told myself I was crazy, and that psychic stuff didn't exist, the more I lost my ability to do things with it. You tell yourself that the thing you saw was a hallucination, that the person who witnessed it was humoring you. You drive yourself crazy, calling yourself crazy. For me to accept that aliens don't exist and I wasn't abducted is to accept that large parts of my life that have been confirmed by non-believers never happened. I haven't told anyone about it in 5 years. I'm 31. I'm terrified of large open spaces away from people at night, and if I watch movies or things with realistic aliens, it sometimes triggers a panic attack. I thought I had a good handle on things until XCOM came out in 2012. All my friends were playing it, so I jumped on too, thinking the alien thing was behind me, pretty much non-stop. I was having nightmares and waking up paralyzed and terrified. It happened so often, I had to tell my girlfriend the truth and stop playing. She was the last person I ever told. We broke up a few years ago and have no intentions of telling my current girlfriend unless it becomes absolutely necessary. As for how I got the aliens to stop taking me away one night, I built up the courage, meditated for a while, focused hard, and simply asked them to stop taking me away, that it was disruptive and ruining my life. I hadn't seen them since then. The abduction started when I was really young. They were not scary experiences, but more like odd dreams, Every night I would sneak down to our living room, which had a large window. I would face the window and say, "How-woo." After that, a large wolf head would materialize and say, "How-woo," back to me, and my next memory would be waking up. I was never caught getting out of bed or going down the stairs, but I do remember that occasionally there would be leaves or dirt on the living room floor that my parents had no clue where it came from. We moved into a suburbs, and that changed the nature of this experience. I don't remember being afraid when I lived in the country, but once I lived in the suburbs, I was terrified of going to sleep. My first memory of an abduction experience was caused by a doctor's visit. Someone I went to school with got sick with something, and everyone who had contact had to get a shot. I'd never had a shot before, but when the nurse approached me with the needle, I lost my shit. I was probably 9 or 10, but it took 3 nurses and poor old Dr. Lee, my pediatrician, to hold me down. I remember telling them to get that thing away from me and getting images of shadowy figures and flashes of pain in my eyes. After that, I was always awake when they came. I'd wake up and they'd be next to my bed or looking in the window, but they never tried to hide their intentions after that. The abductions peaked around 13 or 14, with about 1 every 2 months. By the time I had adjusted my life to try and deal with it, going to sleep as soon as I got home from school and waking up around midnight and staying awake until I went to school, hoping it didn't happen. It might have worked, but it didn't help with school and family life. Slowly, the incidents became less frequent, to maybe once a year. My last abduction was on my 27th birthday. I was fully conscious and had just got done calling into work saying I would not be coming in that night. I walked outside of my car and looked up and saw something moving through the sky. It was black and amorphous and kept changing shapes. At one point, I thought it looked like the space shuttle, but then it started heading towards me. I got in my car and tried starting it, but it didn't even turn over. Right after that, I got this buzzy ringing in my head that was jarring and painful. By then, the craft was right over the top of me and ahead of my car. One of them just materialized and moved toward me. My car door just kind of opened on its own, and it touched me with this rod thing it was carrying, and I blacked out. I came to an hour later and immediately went to work, even though I called off. I haven't had any experiences since, but I still live the way I did when it was happening. I can't sleep at night, so I work at night and sleep during the day. Relationships were difficult to maintain, but I'm doing much better now. I have some feelings that my parents were slightly aware that something was going on when I was younger. I've had several experiences of waking up some distance away from where I was previously or sleeping at. Twice, I was wearing clothes that were not mine. If anyone has any questions, I'll answer as best I can. Thanks for asking this seriously. I was walking from my car going to a grocery store. I always park in the far back of the lot. Mine was of getting added exercise and to avoid the stress of looking for the perfect spot. There was no sound. It was clearly visible. No exhaust, no lights. Oblong object, more round than oval disc with a flatter bottom than top. It had height enough to fit 4 comfortably. Moving so fast it seemed to just appear into my view. It stopped above the lot. No shaky camera action, clear as day. I could even make out the markings on it. It sat there, ominously, for almost 3 minutes. I looked around for someone else, as if it needed this to be a shared experience. Sorry, folks. Back before the times of cell phones, no pictures or videos. Then boom, 2 fighter jets appeared. They move and slow next to the craft. All 3 shoot off in the direction of the coast. The markings was a black American flag and USA. I scurried back to my car and got out of there. The next day in the newspaper was an article about a test pilot going off course and crashing to his death with a request for information. If anyone saw anything, to call a number and report it. I will never look at the missing person boards the same. So many went missing that year. I never called that number. Nope. Okay, so on March 24, 2015, I walked out of my backyard around 11 p.m. and I live in Boring, Oregon. So, honestly, where I lived, it was isolated. I felt like many times there is supposed to be something waiting for me in the backwoods every day. I felt like somebody wanted me to go in the woods and kept sending me signals, whether it was random sounds at night or small glares of light. I kept questioning what the heck could it be that was so obnoxious. I always go there during the day, and there's nothing but branches and trees. So, 11:25, I wanted to yell into the woods and asked to stop messing around, but it was difficult to. I was honestly frozen, and I felt paralyzed. I tried to scream for help, but no words. I kept walking toward the woods, and I felt something grab me by the arm and shoved me through the woods. Then I woke up, and I thought it was a dream. I went outside, of course, and went where I was shoved, and for the rest of the time in my life, I see branches broken and all the leaves on the ground were swept away from each other. I left around that month, and the house is still on sale at Century 21, and I plan to go see it this summer and set up a paranormal crew and wait out at night. I honestly think aliens took me and put me back to bed as an experiment. One night around the age of 10, I was woken up by the room flooded with bright white light. At first I thought a semi must have overturned on 97 and was shining on the curtains. I decided to get up and see what it was, but to my surprise I wasn't able to move at all, much like sleep paralysis. I tried to yell out to my sister so they could help me, but just as I couldn't move, I found myself unable to speak. At this point, I was in a full-on panic attack. Then, one of your stereotypical gray aliens passed through the wall and floated me out through the wall to a flight of the navigation-shaped craft. The intense light that bathed me made it impossible to see. Suddenly, an oxygen mask was put over my face, and I blacked out as if on anesthesia. Some undetermined amount of time passed, and my vision started to become unblurred. I was back in my futon, light still filling the room as the alien looked down at me. Using some sort of telepathic communication, they said to me, "I'm going to inject this into your neck. It won't hurt, won't leave a mark, and it will make you think this was all a dream." They progressed to inject my neck and then float off through the wall. The light faded away in an upward direction, leaving me to stare into the darkness. Slowly my eyes adjusted to the dark, restoring my night vision. Without ever opening my eyes, must have been sleeping with my eyes open, I woke up from the dream, looked over at my sleeping sister, climbed out of the futon, walked into the kitchen, and ate a sweet cherry pepper. I followed that with a glass of water and went back to bed. Today I'm still sure it was just a dream, and I have great dream recall. I don't know if this is because it keeps me from looking crazy, or if it is exactly what the aliens in my dream said that shit would do.